Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. It is a great day. It's a great day. Have you heard that we're going back to the moon? Astronauts are going back to the moon. Artemis 2, a our current mission as I'm recording this, went to the moon, used the moon's gravity to turn around, and they're headed back. How cool is that? That's really cool. Donald Trump was not just saying stuff when he said we were going to go back to the moon those years ago. It's actually happening, and that's pretty interesting, pretty cool, pretty amazing current event that hasn't been hyped up quite as much as it really should have been. I think if NASA were to go into the 21st century and just like have their experts on, like they should just be podcasting all the time and having people talk and doing a blow by blow of how this mission was put together, and it would generate so much interest on the internet. Just a little tip for them for next time for how to leverage social media to really drive interest in going back to the moon. But moon hoax conspiracies, these are one of my favorite conspiracy theories, or shall I say an alternative explanation, alternative theory maybe. I think those are really good words to explain what's going on here. Since I've been on the internet, this is a hoax that has just been around and won't die. And since we have more moon missions, it's come bubbling up to the surface that we never went to the moon, that the moon landings, or really most of the focus is on the moon landing, was a hoax, because the focus is on Apollo 11, the first moon landing, and not the subsequent moon missions. I think the last time we went there was 1972. They did more missions. They stayed longer on the moon. They did more things. There was the lunar rover. There was all kinds of extra things that were accomplished by those additional moon missions. Last time I was at NASA here in Houston, one of the explanations they gave for why they stopped the Apollo program was just waning public interest. That public interest was really focused on the event of getting to the moon, and once it was there, it almost became routine. As crazy as it is to send a spaceship to the moon and land on it, people were then like, okay, we beat the Soviets. What's the next thing? Do we have to keep spending money on this? And that was an interesting read. But the point is the moon hoax, right? A lot of people believed Apollo 11 was faked. That like Stanley Kubrick shot it on a sound studio, and they have all of these different ideas for why it's fake. And they could be starting from a place of space isn't real, like maybe the Earth is flat, so they're faking it. And once you start with that sort of assumption, you start creating all these cool alternative theories about like, okay, they shot it on a soundstage. Stanley Kubrick, who had just shot 2001, he knew all the special effects there. He had done stuff on the moon, and so they hired him to do it. Why isn't the flag, why is the flag waving? Well, they had a pole in the flag so that it would stand up, because they knew that it wouldn't wave without an atmosphere. And in fact, the flag couldn't even get into the ground. It barely was in the ground, barely standing up. And then as soon as they, launched away, it like fell over. There's things like that. They slowed down the footage to make it seem like they were hopping. They slowed it down to make it seem like gravity was not working. They come up with lots of alternative explanations for why these things are. Why can't you see the stars? If they were really on the moon, you'd see a bunch of stars, because there's no blue sky. You'd be seeing the stars. And we've seen I've seen a lot of these things pop back up for this Artemis 2 mission. So one of them was why aren't you seeing the stars out the window? And it really has to do with just the amount of light that a camera sensor can pick up, and same thing with your eyes. We're used to daylight being there's this bright sun, and then there's like this blue sky. So we can't see the stars because there's a blue sky. Actually, you can't see the stars because the sun is so bright. You can't. It just washes out all of the other visible light. And so you can't see the stars. If you're standing in the sun on the moon, you actually won't be able to see the stars because the sun is so dang bright. The difference between those light levels is just not enough. You have to have a really open iris, and at that point, there's just too much light coming in to do anything. So they took a photograph of the Earth, going away from it, going towards the moon. They took a photograph of the Earth, and they took it actually of the dark side of the Earth using a bunch of modern digital camera settings in order to pump up the color on it and pump up the light on it. And you can see like a little bit of an aurora around the outside. The sun on the outside is very, very cool. But people are like, oh, it had to be photoshopped because there were stars, because you could see some stars. Well, yes, you could see the stars because the sun was actually not in the picture, and you were able to have long enough exposure and a big enough iris setting and everything that you could let in the light of stars as well. And you could tell that photograph was done of the Earth on the night side because you can actually see the lights. You can see the lights that show up at night. Really, really interesting stuff. But that's an example. So you come up with lots of alternative theories, and this explanation is a kind of explanation, but it's one that exists for cameras. It exists when you're just doing things with a camera. So you come up with alternative explanations. A shot on this. That's why there's no stars. They slowed down the footage to make it seem like this. They're shooting on a stage now with wires hanging them up so that they're floating around, and it's all fake, and they're just digitally removing the wires. And we have all these special effects. And to be honest, it's pretty fruitless to argue with people that are going to come up with a lot of these alternative explanations, because no matter what you bring up, because they're starting from a different assumption, like space isn't real, they will find some other way that might kind of explain that. I remember trying to, a pretty simple proof of the curvature of the Earth is I used to go out to the beach, and when I lived by the beach, and we'd see these big oil tankers coming into South Bay in LA, and with you got your binoculars out, you could see them disappear over the horizon. They sank below the horizon, and so if you had good optics and it was a clear day, you could actually see ships disappear over the horizon. And the ancients knew this because they would see the ships out at sea and see the ship disappear, but the sail would still be sticking up way in the distance. They could barely see it, so there was all kinds of, the ancients never believed that the Earth was flat. And I'm like, okay, you can test it this way. And someone pointed out in the comments, it's like, oh no, you haven't really dealt with flat earthers yet. They'll tell you that light falls. So the reason that you can't see the ship is that the light is falling down. It's affected by the Earth's gravity or something. So you actually can't see it because light is not buoyant enough. It's like, what? It's like, yes. So they come up with an alternative explanation for it. Light doesn't travel in a straight line. It falls. Now, technically, they're correct, right? Light is actually bent by the Earth. The gravity of the Earth will bend light, but not in a way that you're perceiving. It's not enough to explain the ships disappearing over the horizon. We're talking, it's like you barely notice it, right? You barely see it. And in fact, you have to have a total eclipse and a lot of camera equipment just to see how much the sun, a much more massive object, is bending light around it, which is an interesting thing that you can look up that astronomers have done. So anyway, it brings up this thought about the moon hoaxes. And I think for people that believe very strongly, they have a core part of their belief that space isn't real or the space programs aren't real. Your reasoning for why you might believe the space program is real, it's like bonk, bonk. They have shields up for all of this. They have alternative explanations for everything. Now, why they're going to that extreme to fake everything, I don't know. That's another question. But they always had an explanation for Apollo 11, which is well, we wanted to scare the Russians. So that's a great motivation for faking it, right? Is that it's going to scare other world powers. Well, why did other world powers? Do you think that they would have figured out, someone along the line would have figured out that space isn't real, or that you can't actually go to the moon, or the unmanned spacecraft that other countries have sent to the moon and had taken photographs of the Apollo landing places? That all of that would have to be faked as well. Everybody has to get in on the conspiracy. This is part of a thing that I called the Grand Conspiracy years ago, which is not a deductive but an inductive proof against most alternative theories, which is so many people have to be involved in the conspiracy that it's just really unlikely they're going to be able to keep the secret and keep it for very long. And maybe there's just a deeper question there, is that people really will become almost immune to any kind of other argumentation you might have when they're really thoroughly invested in like a core belief, like that space isn't real or something like that, or the government's lying to us about space. So everything else, the first thing they do is to put it in a place where we're going to have to find an explanation that fits our already preconceived ideas that's going to explain like the fakeness of this sort of stuff. The point here is not to come to like an exhaustive list of all of the alternative theories that exist for moon landings, but just to point out that they're there, and what you will always see is that people will take it and they'll fit it into their pre-existing theories. This actually happens in science as well, is that any given data is usually first look to try to fit into an existing theory, and only later do you start to question your models if the data doesn't fit. Right? You know, you've probably seen this, and it's not like science is free of political influence or anything like that. I'm not trying to make that as well, but I just find it really interesting to see these things bubble up and people just being really rabid that you're never getting to the moon. The moon isn't happening. It's all fake. So on and so forth, because they can't really believe in the greatness of people. They can't really believe that people are smart enough to do this, and they can't really believe that there's enough sort of intellectual power and enough will and technology to do that stuff, right? And to rebuild it, because the Apollo 11 program, we lost all that tooling. You know, it's not like we lost the math, but you have all of this technology you have to build up, all the pieces of the rocket. We've like rebuilt that in order to do it again. That yes, you can do great things again. What one man has done, another can do. I think that was from a movie, but anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on the current moon hoaxes and what you maybe think about them. Are you a moon hoaxer? Do you think the moon landings were a hoax? Do you think just the first one was a hoax? I'd love to know your opinions on that. Because there's lots of little things like, how did Nixon phone them from the Earth? It's like, we had radios, and yes, there was a huge time delay because that's a thing, you know. But anyway, I would just love to know your thoughts about it, and I'll check them out, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great day. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. There's books and music available as part of that subscription, and that supports me. That helps me to continue existing on YouTube and existing as an artist, a person who likes to make music and write books. I do have a new album out from all of my live stuff from last year. It's called Dusk Eternal. So please do check that out, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great day.